We usually think of developers as the primary creators in a video game scenario, but players often find things that weren't necessarily intended. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 unscripted video game moves discovered by fans, part 2. Let's start off at number 10 with horse tilting from Skyrim. Now, the amount of glitches and exploits found in Skyrim is basically equivalent to the amount of stars in the sky, but that's half the reason why the game is still so entertaining after all these years. One of the most bizarre and ridiculous is horse tilting, where you take a horse, position them on a hill with a semi-steep incline, and then slowly inch them forward. So what happens is the horse basically sticks to the surface until it's vertical. It's so funny. It's just completely impossible. It looks completely absurd. Look at this. You know what I mean? That looks ridiculous. But it doesn't actually do anything until you dismount. That's when this move goes from an amusing thing to a pretty effective speedrunning trick. The game just goes like totally nuts. It makes you hover in the air, and sometimes it'll send you flying. But the most useful part is when you load a save, which for whatever reason causes your character to run around at super speeds through the air. It's so fast you can cross the map in like literally seconds. It's ridiculous how fast this thing makes you go, and it's because you tilted a horse on its side. It doesn't make any sense to me in any way. From like the obvious problem with the physics, like there's no world in which this makes sense physically speaking. But even from a programming perspective, I don't get how these things are correlated. It's amazing. At number 9 is the rocket kick in Bayonetta. There aren't a lot of literal moves on this list. It's usually more tricks or glitches that have gotten names and have kind of become moves. But in this entry, I'm actually talking about a move discovered by players. One of the weapons you can get in Bayonetta is the Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore, a pair of rocket launcher tonfas that they're slow, but the rocket launchers, they're very powerful. Normally, they're kind of balanced. I don't want to say balance, but like at least a little. But with some clever weapon switching, you can make a weapon that normally shoots out one rocket, like per attack, into one that sprays a barrage of rockets that is just utterly devastating. The trick is to trigger the rapid fire kick attack while wearing the Durgas on your feet. That's how you do it normally. But then instead of just letting that play out, you switch to the Kilgore just as the kick animation starts. And if you do it correctly, the normal rapid fire kick gets augmented with rockets, which can potentially instantly kill bosses. That's how powerful it is. Also, it just looks totally insane. At number 8, Resident Evil 4's Ashley suplex, another move you're not supposed to do, at least not as this particular character. Normally in Resident Evil 4, it's possible for Leon to perform a suplex on stoned enemies in the castle area, but for a short time, your control switches over to Ashley, and you're supposed to be basically helpless. So she doesn't have any guns normally and isn't supposed to be able to do any grapples, so the intended way to play is to run away and avoid enemies when you're playing her section. There is a way around that though. If you use a door to stun one of the cultists, it's possible for Ashley to kill them using a lethal suplex, which is clearly unintentional, but completely hilarious. It also makes getting through Ashley's portion of the game like way easier, and while it doesn't work in later versions of the game, at least you can still do it in the GameCube version. At number 7 is the time stop in Fallout New Vegas. Like Skyrim, Fallout New Vegas isn't exactly the most stable game. There's a lot of bugs. I mean, Bethesda made it, so, you know. I don't know how Starfield's gonna turn out. The way the Bethesda games work means that there's a ton of little tricks and skips players have managed to figure out. My personal favorite is this one, where with the correct button combination, you literally can just stop time. Basically, what you have to do is mash the place marker button at the same time you open the map screen. If you do it right, you trick the game into thinking that you're still in the menu, even though you can walk around. All the NPCs freeze in place. You can pick up and manipulate objects. They'll just like hang in the air. Like, it's actually pretty amazing. If you ever wanted to experience what it's like to say, Zawirdo, then this is a move to try. Also, I'm not doing that again, don't ask. Of course, it's not perfect. The world only renders around you up to a certain point, so it's possible to fall through the world if you travel too far from where you started. But it's easy to turn time on again. You just go back to the menu and do this. At number 6 is jump canceling from the Devil May Cry series. Probably one of those moves that was originally unintentional but became a staple eventually. Normally certain attacks can only be done once in the air, which limits your combo potential, but if you jump off an enemy by using the enemy step ability, you can repeat the attack endlessly because the jump cancels the current attack mid-animation. It requires some careful timing, but once you master this move, you can just go nuts in these games and pull off some totally insane combos. I am not nearly good enough to show off some of the really advanced stuff, but in DMC4, it's pretty easy to demonstrate how this works with Nero's grab attack. Now, it's not a coincidence in my opinion that this is one of those things that came out of a Capcom game. Capcom at its best makes these games with these combat systems that are incredibly satisfying to use and very quick to transfer between different types of things. So they really lend themselves to finding stuff like this that wasn't necessarily intended. Remember in the last video we covered combos in Street Fighter 2. Combos, which are literally a massive staple of all fighting games now. Capcom's also smart in that they understand when to integrate those things. I don't know if they've specifically, intentionally kept it in the series. Like, it may just be that they're accurately attempting to reproduce the controls in newer entries, but I don't know. Like, it's one of those moves that makes an already deep combat system more complex. Not for beginners, but if you really want to rank up those triple S ranks, you gotta learn to jump cancel. And number 5 is infinite bomb jumping in Metroid, a classic that pretty much everybody knows about, but it's such a famous move we have to mention it. Bomb jumping in the Metroid games is kind of a key part of gameplay that's been there from the beginning, but I don't think the developers intended to make it so you could just potentially bomb jump forever. With the right timing, you can keep going higher and higher using bomb jumping, making it possible, with some effort, to totally break the game and get to places much earlier than you're supposed to. Now, every single game in the series has slightly different rhythm in terms of its controls. This is obvious too. We're talking about games that span many different systems, and some of them are 8-bit with very limited sprite sizes, all the way up to Metroid Dread, which is just like incredible in every way in terms of graphics on top of how it works. But they all are different. So you either have to find like a dedicated guide kind of talking about the timing, or you got to be really patient to learn it. It's still possible though in every Metroid game, and it's potentially really easy to do once you get the hang of it. At number 4 is Vanish Doom / X Zone in Final Fantasy III, another old school classic move that was basically a bug. Using a really specific combination of spells, you could pretty much kill everything in the game instantly, including, the last boss. The spells are Vanish, which can turn players and enemies invisible and immune to physical attacks, and Doom or X Zone is an instant kill spell. In most RPGs, instant kills are basically useless, either because they have an incredibly low chance of hitting or because most enemies are actually immune to them, and that's absolutely the case with this game. The difference here is that the Vanish spell, for some reason, overrides all the immunity checks. It makes enemies vulnerable to these instant death spells. So with these two spells combined, pretty much everything dies instantly. The only real roadblock are the enemies that have immunity to Vanish, but that is not a lot of enemies in this game. It's really rare to have immunity to Vanish. I remember pretty much every strategy guide back in the day had this quote-unquote move in them. It's totally a bug, but it just feels like part of the game now. And number 3 is the moon jump from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Basically, Breath of the Wild's answer to the horse tilting of Skyrim. This move requires some specific things to occur, but if you pull it off, you're able to jump endlessly. On paper, it sounds tricky, but with the right timing, it's actually not that difficult. First, yes, you do need a horse. You ride it, and you start at the horse archery minigame. While the timer's still going, you find a group of wild horses, and then you ride one. If the horse is bucking just as the timer expires on the minigame, you'll suddenly find yourself hovering in the air with the horse going totally nuts. Now you just fast travel and it seems like things are back to normal, but you have the ability to moon jump or endlessly jump as many times as you want. It's just one of the many totally insane tricks players have managed to pull off in Breath of the Wild. Just watch a guide if you want to replicate it. The timing is a little tricky, but once you understand it, it's much less tricky. And number 2 is Tetris's T-spin. Anyone who has played Tetris has had a moment where they managed to pull off that just clutch move where you manage to rotate a piece into a spot that would be normally impossible. I am a Tetris freak. I've played Tetris since NES. And I realize it's not the first version, but that was the first version it was possible for me to play it. And the T-spin was an unintentional thing. But it didn't take very long for the creators to be like, oh, this works great and it's awesome. It's satisfying. Why not reward the player for it? So it often, in later versions of Tetris, is like, T-spin. It doesn't, say it like a racing game announcer like I did right there, but it does say it. Now, I'm specifically calling out the T-spin because it's probably the most well-known version of this sort of trick. But really, anytime you manage to rotate a piece into a blocked-off spot, it's just awesome. The T-spin, it feels like an essential part of playing Tetris now, that it's weird to go back and play the old games where spinning was actually kind of harder to pull off. They didn't officially integrate it as a move. Man, it's vital. And finally, bunny hopping in Source Engine games. How could we forget this? If you played any FPS game, turn of the century, you know what we're talking about. When developers first started adding jumping to Doom clones, I think that they expected something different than that being the only thing people did in multiplayer. Like, the act of bunny hopping is simple, and while it's not always the most powerful technique these days, it's something you're going to see all the time if you play online games. It's just when players continuously jump, either to build forward momentum or to make themselves harder to target. And it's not just Source Engine games either. It's like Quake, Quake 3, Half-Life, which are all very related in terms of Source Engine, but not necessarily officially Source Engine. The original Counter-Strike, though, big Source Engine example. There's tons of bunny hopping in all of them. So much that the move kind of became a dirty word, like with FPS gamers. A lot of games specifically adjusted jumping to make bunny hopping worse, and that's mostly stuck since the 2010s, although a few games come along that buck the trend, like Apex Legends, where a certain form of bunny hopping is alive and well. Some people hate it, and some people actually miss it and wish it was in more games these days. So it's definitely a divisive one, but bunny hopping is probably one of the most important moves that was ever discovered by fans. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Gameranx.